I spent 31 days in the ICU fighting for my life, and my family never came. Not mom, not dad, not my brother, Jason. Every morning, I looked at the empty chair beside my bed and told myself someone would walk through that door. No one did. Then, 1 month after I came home, Mom texted me, not to ask if I could walk. She said Jason needed a house for his new family, and I had to sign mine over that day. I sent her a picture of a toy tent and blocked her. 3 hours later, my doorbell rang and everything got worse. My name is Susan Carter. I'm 38, and I work as a commercial construction contractor. People hear that and usually picture hard hats, steel beams, and men yelling over power tools. They're not wrong. Most mornings, I'm on a job site before sunrise with coffee in one hand and a project schedule in the other. I built that life because I learned early not to expect anyone to build one for me. My younger brother, Jason, learned the opposite lesson. Jason was 34. Handsome, charming, and working in car sales. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 new friends. He could also spend money faster than he earned it. When Jason got into trouble, Mom called it a rough patch. When I struggled, Dad called it character building. I remember being 20 and saving for months to buy an old used car. Jason was 16. One night, he took the keys without asking and wrecked it. Nobody was seriously hurt. When Dad got home, he looked at the damaged car, then looked at me. Why did you leave the keys where he could get them? That was our family in one sentence. Jason made the mess. I was supposed to prevent it. Years later, nothing had really changed. Mom, Diane, had spent years planning events and cared deeply about appearances. Dad, Mark, worked in logistics and believed family problems should be handled quietly, preferably by whoever was most capable of fixing them. That person was usually me. Then came that cold morning in November. I was walking through a commercial renovation site when a sharp pain hit my lower abdomen. I stopped beside a stack of drywall. For a second, I thought I'd pulled something. Then the pain doubled. My coffee slipped from my hand and splashed across the concrete. I remember someone shouting my name. Then the ceiling disappeared. At the hospital, everything moved fast, bright lights, cold sheets, the bitter smell of sanitizer. A doctor told me my appendix had ruptured and the infection was spreading. I needed emergency surgery. Before they took me back, I called Mom. My voice was shaking. Mom, I'm at the hospital. They're taking me into surgery. Can you come? There was music behind her, glasses clinking. She told me everyone was busy with preparations for Jason's engagement. Then she said the doctors were already taking care of me. I asked again. Mom, please. She hesitated. Then she said Jason had been under a lot of pressure lately. That was the last thing I heard before the nurse took my phone. When I woke up, there was one chair beside my bed, empty. It stayed that way for 31 days. Eventually, I stopped looking at the door. That was when the empty chair stopped feeling like a question. It became an answer. The day I was discharged. It was raining hard enough to turn the parking lot silver. A nurse wheeled me to the entrance while I held a small bag of medication against my chest. My legs felt weak. My stomach still pulled every time I moved. Nobody was waiting. By then, I had stopped expecting them. I called a rideshare and went home alone. The house looked exactly the way I had left it, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. The air smelled stale. Unopened mail covered the floor near the door. My coffee mug was still sitting beside the sink. That first night, I tried to change the dressing over my incision. The medical tape slipped from my fingers and rolled under the vanity. I bent down too quickly. Pain tore through my abdomen. I ended up sitting on the cold bathroom floor, one hand pressed against my stomach, breathing through clenched teeth. And one thought came into my head. If I passed out right now, how long would it take anyone in my family to notice that question stayed with me? For the next month, I recovered quietly. I managed work from my laptop. I walked a little farther every day. I ate when I wasn't hungry because the doctor told me I needed strength. My family stayed silent. No apology, no explanation, nothing. Eventually, I started believing maybe silence was the best thing they could give me. Then, one afternoon, my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. Mom. My heart actually jumped. That embarrassed me. After everything, some small part of me still thought maybe she was finally going to ask how I was feeling. I opened the message. There was no hello. Jason and Lauren had been trying to buy a house, but Jason's debt and credit history had wrecked the financing. Then came the sentence I read 3 times. Jason needs a home for his new family. We need you to sign your property over to him today. I stared at the screen. My house. The place I had saved for, planned, and worked years to build. Mom wanted me to hand it over because I was single and Jason was getting married, before I could answer. Dad called. He told me I had more space than I needed. Jason was starting a family. I was financially stable. I could always buy something smaller, I said. Dad. I almost died. He paused. Then he told me I was alive now, and Jason was the one who needed help. Something inside me went completely still. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I ordered a cheap children's toy tent. When it arrived, I set it on my kitchen island, took a picture, and sent it to Mom. I wrote one sentence. This is the only house I'm giving Jason. Then I blocked her. I blocked Dad. I blocked Jason. For the first time in weeks. I smiled. 3 hours later, someone knocked on my front door, and when I opened it, I realized the house was only the beginning. Uncle Thomas stood on my porch with a travel bag over one shoulder. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then his eyes moved over my face, down to the way I was still holding one hand against my stomach. Susan, he said quietly, you look awful. That was the closest anyone in my family had come to sounding worried in 2 months. Thomas had been away working for weeks. He stepped inside, dropped his bag by the door, and hugged me carefully. Then he pulled back. Why didn't anyone tell me it was this bad? I stared at him. What are you talking about? His expression changed. He told me Mom had been telling relatives that I wanted complete privacy in the hospital, according to her. I had asked everyone not to visit because I needed space to recover. I actually laughed. It came out dry and ugly. I begged her to come. Thomas went completely still. Then he sat down at my kitchen table. There's something else. My stomach tightened. A few days earlier, he had overheard Dad talking about refinancing debts connected to Jason. It was a large amount, around $75,000. That alone wasn't my problem. Then Thomas said Dad mentioned my name, not casually, as someone who could back the loan. I felt cold. I never agreed to anything. I know, Thomas said. That's why I came here. The next morning, I called Benjamin, an attorney I had worked with before. He told me not to accuse anyone yet. Facts first, he said, then we protect you. So that's what I did. I requested my medical records. The notes were clear. There had never been a visitor ban. My family had been informed that my condition was serious. They had simply chosen not to come. Seeing it written down hurt more than I expected. It turned 31 days of doubt into something permanent. Then Benjamin had me review my credit activity and recent financial inquiries. That was when we found it. A loan application for roughly $75,000 was still being reviewed. And there, listed as a guarantor, was my name. Underneath it was a signature I had never given. For several seconds, I just stared at the page. The date hit me hardest. It had been submitted while I was still recovering, while I was learning how to stand upright without pain, while my mother was telling people I didn't want visitors. Benjamin immediately helped me dispute the application, protect my credit, and notify the financial institution that I had never authorized the guarantee. I saved every message, every payment reference, every bill connected to the situation. Then I asked him one question. What happens to them that depends on what the review finds, and what happens to me? He looked directly at me. You stop letting them make their emergencies your responsibility. That afternoon, Aunt Nancy called. Mom wanted me at Jason's engagement dinner. She said it was time to settle everything like a family. I almost said no. Then I looked at the empty chair across from my kitchen table. Tell her I'll be there. This time. I wasn't bringing a house deed. The engagement dinner was held in a private room at an upscale restaurant downtown. Soft jazz played near the bar. Candles flickered inside glass holders. Servers moved between tables carrying trays of champagne, and every few minutes someone laughed too loudly. From the doorway, it looked perfect. That was always Mom's favorite kind of picture, perfect from far away. Thomas walked in beside me. I wore a navy suit and low heels because my stomach still ached if I stood too long. I had tucked the folder Benjamin prepared under one arm. Mom saw me first. Her smile disappeared. Dad turned next. Jason was sitting beside Lauren, one hand around a glass. He looked annoyed before I had even reached the table. Mom stood. Susan, I'm glad you finally decided to act like family. I ignored that. I want to talk to you, Dad, and Jason privately. Dad leaned back in his chair. No. Several people nearby went quiet. Mark, Mom said softly. No, he repeated. She wanted drama. She can explain herself right here. I felt Thomas shift beside me. I touched his arm. I didn't need him to fight this battle for me. Dad pointed toward me. You've embarrassed your mother. You sent your brother a ridiculous toy. You're withholding a house you don't even need, all because we couldn't drop everything when you had surgery. Lauren slowly lowered her glass. Jason shook his head. You've always had more than me. Susan, one time I actually need help, and you turn it into some moral crisis. I looked around the table. Aunt Nancy was there. Eric, too. Lauren's parents were sitting across from Jason. Everyone had heard enough lies to form an opinion about me. I gave Dad one last chance. I asked to do this privately. He laughed. Then, stop lying in public. I placed the folder on the table. Okay. The room went still. Then, let's stop lying. I opened it. First came the medical records. I didn't read every line. I didn't have to. I showed them the summary confirming there had been no visitor restriction during my stay. Then I looked at Mom. You told everyone I asked you not to come. Her face tightened. That's not what I said. Thomas spoke for the first time. Yes, Diane, it is. Mom looked away. I continued. The hospital contacted my emergency contacts because my condition was serious. Nobody was banned. Nobody was turned away. Nancy's face changed. She looked at Mom. You told me Susan wanted privacy. Mom's voice sharpened. She was sick. Everything was confusing. I pulled out my phone. Then this shouldn't be confusing. I showed the message about the house. Lauren leaned closer. Her eyes moved across the screen. Then she looked at Jason. You asked her to give you her house. Jason's jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. It says exactly that. Dad jumped in. We were trying to help two people starting a life together. No, I said. You were trying to decide what belonged to me. Then I pulled out the last set of papers. Dad stopped moving. That was the first moment I knew he understood what I had. There's also a loan application for about $75,000. Jason's face went pale. My name was listed as a guarantor. Lauren turned toward him. What loan? Nobody answered her. I kept my voice calm. I never agreed to guarantee anything. I never signed it. I formally disputed it, and the financial institution is reviewing what happened. Mom stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. We were trying to help Jason. You can help Jason with your money. I looked directly at her. Using my name is not help. Jason leaned forward. This is a misunderstanding. Lauren stared at him. Did you know her name was on it? He looked at Dad, then Mom, then down at the table. That silence answered her. I closed the folder. I'm not asking anyone here to choose sides. Lauren, whatever you decide after tonight is your decision. I just thought you deserved to know what you were walking into. Lauren stood. Her mother stood with her. Jason reached for her hand. She pulled it away. The room broke into whispers. I turned and walked toward the lobby. Jason caught up with me near the entrance. Susan, wait. I stopped. His voice dropped. Just tell them you knew about the guarantee. We can fix this. Not, I'm sorry. Not how could we do this to you. Just save me. Again. I looked at my little brother and finally saw the pattern without the family excuses wrapped around it. Our whole lives. Somebody caught you before you hit the ground. His eyes widened. Susan, please. I shook my head. Not this time. Then I walked out. And for once, I didn't turn around. The next few weeks were strangely quiet. not peaceful. Just quiet in the way a house feels after a storm has torn through it, and everyone is waiting to see what is still standing. Benjamin handled the financial side. The loan application was stopped before it was completed, and I was formally removed from any responsibility tied to it. The review into how my name and signature had been used continued without me. That mattered. For the first time. I wasn't standing in the middle of someone else's disaster holding a bucket. I let the people responsible deal with the water. Lauren postponed the wedding almost immediately. A few weeks later, she ended the engagement. Mom blamed me, of course, through Aunt Nancy. I heard that she was telling people I had destroyed Jason's future. But Lauren had started asking questions after that dinner. She found debts Jason had never fully explained, bills he had minimized, promises he had made about money that did not exist. The relationship didn't collapse because I exposed him. It collapsed because there was finally enough light to see what had already been there. Mom and Dad had their own problems, without my name attached to the loan. They were left facing roughly $75,000 in financial obligations, along with the bills they had already taken on trying to rescue Jason. They cut expenses. Then they sold the large suburban house they had spent years showing off at holidays and family gatherings. They moved somewhere smaller. I heard that from Thomas. I didn't ask where. Jason kept his job and started living differently. No expensive dinners, no constant upgrades, no pretending everything was fine. Months later, I got a short message from him. He said he was sorry. He said he had messed up. I stared at those words for a long time. The old Susan would have answered immediately. She would have asked if he was okay. She would have tried to turn his apology into another chance to save him. I deleted the message, not because I hated him, because I finally understood that forgiveness and access were not the same thing. 6 months after the engagement dinner, I made a decision nobody in my family expected. I sold my house, the house they had tried to take from me. The funny thing was, by then, keeping it felt like letting them keep a piece of me trapped inside it. I had spent years building that place as proof. Proof that I was capable. Proof that I was successful. Proof that I deserved to be taken seriously. I didn't need proof anymore. I bought a smaller place closer to work. It had big windows, warm afternoon light, and just enough room for the life I actually wanted. One evening, after a long week, I came down with a bad cold. A friend showed up with soup and a paper bag full of groceries. She sat across from me while I complained about work and laughed until I started coughing. Then I noticed the chair. A simple chair across from mine. And suddenly, I was back in the ICU, staring at that empty seat beside my bed. Except this time, someone was sitting there. Someone had shown up when I had nothing to offer. No house. No money. No solution. Just me. That was when I finally understood what freedom felt like. My family had spent years teaching me that love meant sacrifice. I had learned something better. Love shows up. And the people who truly love you never need you to disappear so they can be comfortable. If this story taught me anything, it's that love should never require you to surrender your peace, your dignity, or the life you built. Setting a boundary isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the first honest thing you've done for yourself in years. If you've ever looked at an empty chair and realized who truly shows up when you need them, share your story in the comments. And if you believe family is proven by actions, not just blood, subscribe so you don't miss the next story.